A lot to get to today. The Hall of Fame game is tonight. Great Hall of Famers will be playing in this game tonight. No Hall of Famers. I guess it's possible. I wonder how many actual Hall of Famers have played in the Hall of Fame game.
Zach Wilson's playing tonight.
Yeah, he's not going to be a Hall of Famer.
You don't know.
It's a safe bet.
It's early.
It's Zach Wilson and Kellen Mond. But was there just a point spread on there?
Yeah.
Earl, did you put? Yeah, Earl,
There
put a point spread on there.
It is
was
amazing.
-1.5?
Like you have to be. If you bet on preseason, you are a high-level degenerate. If you bet on preseason, how do they even come up with the lines? I got to ask my guys at Bet Rivers how they come up with the lines for preseason games. Like, how do you even figure that out? Is it that Zach Wilson's better than Kellen Mond?
I don't know. Is it concerning that the Jets are favored? Is that a problem?
Why the Jets are like? The Jets to me are very similar to the Browns in that I think they're the two most likely teams that were under 500 last year in the AFC to make the playoffs.
One of them is going to be massively disappointing this year.
Agreed.
I don't know which one. Maybe both.
If you had to bet on Browns, Jets both making the playoffs or both not making the playoffs, what would you bet?
Well, as stacked as the AFC is, I think you'd have to bet not. I don't think that's the case, but I think you'd have to bet that they wouldn't make the playoffs.
I would bet that they would. I think these are two talented teams. I think that these teams are ready to take the next step. I would bet that they would. There's so much change from the NFL year to year. So
I'm leaning towards putting the Browns and Jets as the 6 and 7 seed in the AFC. At this moment, I'm not ready to make official predictions yet, but at this moment, I'm leaning towards the Browns and the Jets as the 6 and 7 seed, knocking out the Dolphins and Ravens from last year.
I think one of them makes the playoffs and one of them doesn't.
Yeah.
One's in, one's out.
But I think they're both in the same boat.
They are.
There's a lot of expectations.
They could be 6 and 11. They could be 11 and 6. I don't think either one would really be that
weird.
surprising.
Like there's both some unknown for the quarterback. Deshaun Watson's first full year with the Browns. Aaron Rodgers is obviously his first year period. Aaron Rodgers is obviously more proven than Watson, but Aaron Rodgers is old.
Yeah.
He's going to turn, 40 this year or 39?
39.
So does he have one great year left? Tyvus says he thinks he does. Tom Brady in his last year with New England seemed to be on the decline, and then his first couple of years in Tampa Bay was fantastic. Whereas Deshaun Watson's coming off a year where he didn't play well, but only 6 games, didn't play the year before. So it all comes down to the quarterbacks. If Deshaun Watson and Aaron Rodgers both play up to their capabilities, then both of those teams should be in the playoffs. And if they don't, then neither team will. Because in the AFC, you're not getting anywhere with bad quarterback play.
No.
You can sneak into the playoffs in the NFC if you got a great running game and a really good defense, and maybe you're getting subpar quarterback play. You can't get to the playoffs in the AFC with subpar quarterback play. That's not happening.
Yeah.
It's just too deep and too talented in the AFC. Anthony, what's going on?
Yeah, guys, before we get into tonight's game, I just want to remind everybody that for $4.99 a month, you can become a member of Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. You get overtime. You get some benefits at the Cleveland's clothing company. And today's overtime is going to be how demoralizing is it that Rosario and Bell had a great outing last night for both of their new 2 teams. And then, without further ado, we can get in to the first game preview tonight for the Hall of Fame game.
All right, Jason, start us off. What do you got your eye on for tonight's Hall of Fame game?
The clock.
Okay, besides the clock. Is it some of the
Come on,
rookies?
Jason.
Is it some guys battling for roster spots? Do you have your eye on anything tonight?
No, not. DTR actually in the second half. I'm curious to see. This is the backup quarterback of the future, allegedly, and Kellen Mond's going to get the start tonight, but Mond more than likely is not going to be on this team going forward.
Probably not.
It's going to be obviously Deshaun, Dobbs, and DT and Dorian. So I want to see him. He's got a similar skill set to Deshaun. That's kind of why they took him. And I guess just overall, even though it's not going to be the starting offense and Deshaun out there, there's still going to be, I believe, it's going to be the offense. It's going to be that offense. It's going to be a lot of pre-snap motion. It's going to be a lot of rollouts. It's going to be, some different formations than what we've seen before. So even though it's not the players that you're going to see this year, I do think you're going to at least be able to get a little bit of a glimpse of what this offense is going to look like because they're going to be running those same plays.
Earl, how about you?
I think for me is I'm really excited to see Cedric Tillman. I know Cedric Tillman is a rookie and not much is expected of him, but we do know this is the NFL, and we know an injury can happen just like that. And so just to see him get his feet wet, just to see him get acclimated being on an NFL field, I'm interested to see what he'll do out there because there might come a point in time in the season to where he is asked to contribute. We know how important the wide receiver position is in today's NFL, and we know guys go down and they get hurt all the time. Bull, me and you were two people who felt like the Browns should have went after DeAndre Hopkins. I think you kind of felt the same way. And so, Amari Cooper has already dealt with a tweak. Injury is unknown. We probably won't have Marquise Goodwin for this year. And so just looking at things like that, if Cedric Tillman can show something, maybe we can get a bigger return on investment sooner than what we thought.
So I'm with you on Tillman. I do think when you watch the preseason for us, the viewer, the fan, is pretty meaningless because a guy playing well in these games, especially a game like this where there's no starters playing, and even a lot of second, even second backup players who are locks for the roster probably aren't playing much in a game like this, if at all. And so if a Cedric Tillman went off for a big game, we'll have fans that will overreact to that, and that's something you just got to be careful with. I will say that I am curious not only about Cedric Tillman, but the wide receiver room in general. I want to see how those guys are running routes. I want to see how they're used in this game. Like, who is in the starting group tonight at wide receiver? What does that mean in terms? Because
Anthony Schwartz.
Right. It's an opportunity to make some plays that you can't necessarily translate to the regular season, but may translate into a spot on the roster. As far as Cedric Tillman playing, I don't think it has anything to do with injuries. He is going to be a part of this offense. At very least, I expect him to be their fourth wide receiver, and the fourth wide receiver gets opportunities, not just if there's injuries. Because again, we went back to this yesterday. Elijah Moore and Donovan Peoples-Jones, they're not like studs. Donovan Peoples-Jones, he's a good, solid third wide receiver. We're hoping Elijah Moore can turn into a number two. He hasn't shown that yet. I think you drafted Cedric Tillman in the third round. I don't think they drafted him to sit the bench as a rookie.
No.
He's going to play.
Somebody's going to emerge as that fourth,
Yes.
whether it's Tillman or somebody else. There's a lot of opportunities.
Right, he has an opportunity, and if he plays well, if he shows them something between camp and the preseason, then he's going to get more opportunity. Nobody in this wide receiving core has established enough that Cedric Tillman couldn't get some playing time. Even as a fourth receiver, you're going to play.
Yeah.
And I guess he's battling for that fourth receiver spot with David, with Bell, and I guess Anthony Schwartz and some of these other undrafted guys. Who was it that somebody mentioned yesterday? Dalen Thompson or
what's his name? Darden. The guy.
Jalen Darden's one of them.
Jalen Darden is one of them. No, I get Bull's point, but I think he's definitely helped himself. That's been clear. He's had a solid camp so far. If you listen to people who's been following the team closely, and then circumstances has created opportunity for him. So I definitely think he'll compete. But I think that when we look at the tight end group, to me, I think we have to just consider them all as just a pass catching unit. When you look at a guy like Atkins, I've heard Mary Kay talk about that this is a tight end who kind of lines up at wide receiver a lot, a guy that can play like a wide receiver. We know what David Njoku is. We know what Harrison Bryant is. So I do think it'll be opportunities there for Cedric Tillman, but I do think just the pass catching unit as a whole, I think that he has a lot of weapons to throw to. So, but Cedric Tillman I felt like they drafted him to be Donovan Peoples-Jones' replacement, possibly. That could be very true. I think when he was drafted, we all said that. And so just knowing that, just to see him get out there, and be able to do his thing. I know he made a pretty good highlight play the first day back in Berea the other day that made fans go crazy. So it'd be interesting. A guy like Anthony Schwartz, boy, I know you say like if a guy goes crazy, you have to understand the competition that's out there. But you can only play who's put in front of you.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
And it's an opportunity for them.
And it's an opportunity for them.
Yeah.
We've seen other guys for the Cleveland Browns in the past that used the preseason to make this roster, and then we seen them actually have some success. It wasn't much with a guy like Isaiah Crowell, who balled his ass off in the preseason, or Josh Cribbs, for example, way back when. So you got to play who's in front of you and just take advantage of the opportunity. A guy like Anthony Schwartz, I think he needs this. Jason, you say he'll probably be out there starting. Maybe it's him and Cedric Tillman starting. I don't know if Donovan Peoples-Jones is going to play or not, but
I doubt it.
if it's him and Tillman, those two young men got an opportunity to just show the coaches and the scouts and Andrew Berry something.
It'd be nice to see a young Browns receiver contribute right away. I mean, like we almost have never seen that outside of Josh Gordon. Like, and probably Tillman's not going to get an opportunity to be a starter, right? Because there's 3 guys ahead of him on the depth chart. So he probably won't have much of an opportunity to put up any kind of big numbers. Mm-hmm. But the Browns have not really had a wide receiver make an impact as a rookie.
Right. I think there's a difference. You don't want him being a big contributor right away because that means something went terribly wrong. Somebody got hurt.
I look at it as he's so good we can't keep him out of the lineup.
Yeah, I mean, to your point,
yeah,
you'd like to see these guys get on the field and make a first down catch and move the chains. Make a big third down catch. We haven't seen that from Anthony Schwartz or David Bell or any of these other younger receivers.
You know, but the truth is, Jason, that when the year that Nick Chubb was a rookie, what was that, 2017?
2018.
2018? Remember who the Browns' starting running back was that year?
It was Carlos Hyde.
Yeah.
Carlos Hyde, right? If you go back and look at it, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but if you go back and look at that season, the first, I want to say 5-6 games, whatever it was, Nick Chubb was only getting like 4 or 5 carries a game. And Carlos Hyde was getting like 15 carries. They had another back, too. I can't remember now who. There was a 3-back rotation there, and Nick Chubb was getting the least of it. And Carlos Hyde was getting the majority of the carries early that season, and he was doing nothing. Mm-hmm. And Nick Chubb was getting like 5 carries for 50 yards. And after a couple of weeks, a bunch of us were like, well, what the hell's going on? Let's get rid of Carlos Hyde. Let's play Nick Chubb. And so things like that can happen. I get it. You know, Nick Chubb was a second-round pick. Mm-hmm. You know, it wasn't like he was a complete short thing. He'd come off a lot of injuries in college, and he became a star. I'd love to see a situation, not necessarily where the starting guy is bad, but a situation where Cedric Tillman is so good every time he's on the field that you can't keep him out. Yeah. And that hasn't happened with the Browns at that position in forever.
Pickens last year in Pittsburgh. George Pickens last year in Pittsburgh.
Exactly. And I'd love to see that happen this year. I don't. It might be hard for that opportunity to actually happen, but I'd love to see him be so good. You know, because you think about the young receivers they've added in recent years. You know, Donovan Peoples-Jones has done a nice job, but it's been a slow build with Donovan Peoples-Jones. Not surprisingly, a late pick. But David Bell showed nothing last year. Anthony Schwartz showed nothing the year before. And these 3 guys now with Tillman were all relatively high picks. The first 2 have shown nothing. I think we've all given up on Schwartz at this point.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people have given up on Bell. I think it's unfair after 1 year, but we'll see. But now Tillman's the new hope. So let's, you know, I don't want him to be Donovan Peoples-Jones. I want him to be the next Amari Cooper. Or better. Yeah. Like, they're wide receivers sometimes in the 3rd round that end up being great players. Let's say, hope that he's one of those guys.
Well, I know McNuggets had did a lot of research on him after the Browns drafted him and talked to somebody that he knew that actually worked with the Tennessee Volunteers personally. And then, you know, I would listen to the radio and I would listen to different college scouts. And a lot of people have 1st-round grades on him, or at minimum a early 2nd-round grade. But I think, like, he got hurt.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that definitely hurt his draft stock. I don't know if he had any character issues or anything like that. But
I don't think so.
This is a dude who's a solid football player. This is a guy who, before Jalen Hyatt took off as this big-name deep threat, that he was considered Tennessee's #1 wide receiver. And he put up some pretty good numbers until he got hurt. So there's a lot of #1 potential seemingly with Cedric Tillman. It's just about getting the opportunities, as you said, to put it all together. But to Jason's point, you know, when you look at this offense being the same, no matter who the quarterback is, because all quarterbacks in the quarterback room are so similar, I think he will get the opportunities. He might not be grade A considering, you know, the units he's playing with, but the opportunities would award itself, and I think he'd be okay.
He doesn't have burning speed. That's the one thing that holds him back.
But you don't have to.
He's so big.
Yeah.
And he has such a great catch radius. I saw him make a couple catches in West Virginia that were like, he's the biggest. I think he's the biggest receiver on the team. From what I was seeing. I saw him the first time. I'm like,
he's bigger than Amari.
He's a big. Oh, he's way bigger
than
Amari. He's a big dude.
From a physical standpoint and a skill set standpoint, he kind of reminds me of T. Higgins a little bit. Like T. Higgins is not a burner.
Yeah.
But he's big.
He's a great
strong,
route runner.
He's a great route runner, and he catches everything.
I would actually like to see Tillman on Martin Emerson on a route. That'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Those are 2 big
that is
dudes.
fun. Yeah.
I'll tell you one other thing worth watching tonight is some of the guys getting an opportunity at defensive tackle.
Yeah.
Because and again, I could say, well, all right, but they're facing backups. But that's okay. Mm-hmm. And that's a position where I think I could take something. Certainly the Browns can take something out of, hey, was I able to hold up in the pocket, against the center, against the guards? Was I able to stop the run? Was I able to create an opportunity for a linebacker to make a play? The defensive tackle position, in terms of remember, they rotate on that defensive line. So you're going to have 3, if not 4 defensive tackles that are going to get an opportunity to play a significant amount of plays. And the Browns only have one guy that's a sure thing at that position. We know Dalvin Tomlinson is going to play a lot. Outside of that, we have no clue who's going to be second, third, and fourth in snaps on at defensive tackle. And so, and some of it might be Myles Garrett occasionally, or some of the defensive ends. But there's an opportunity to get real playing time, and that challenge starts tonight.
You'll get your first look at Siaki Ika tonight, I would imagine.
Right. I would think Maurice Hurst, even though he's a veteran, is going to play.
I was just thinking about him. I'm not sure because there's such an injury concern. Do you really want to run him out here? But he has got to play.
We got to see. Yeah, he's fighting for a job.
I think go ahead.
Tommy Togiai. I mean, he's probably not going to be here.
He's the Anthony Schwartz of the D line.
Yeah, he'll be out there tonight.
Yeah.
I think the one for me is Tristan Hill. Like when you talk to people, and I was listening to an interview with the defensive line coach. And they was asking him of the guys who he thought was getting off the line of scrimmage the fastest. And he shocked me when he says, Tristan Hill from the defensive tackle position seems to be the one guy that's getting off the line of scrimmage faster than anybody else. I don't know what the situation was in Dallas. I don't know much about him. But that's a guy that can, possibly make some noise. It seems like he's caught the coach's attention already. So it'll be interesting to see what he do. But I think outside of the defensive tackle position, I look at the linebacker room as well. You know what I mean? That's considered by most the weakest position on the team. And so, you got Jordan Phillips back coming off an injury. You got Sione Takitaki back coming off the injury. So it'd be interesting to see how guys like that play. I do feel like even though, guys won't play this game, but just throughout the preseason, a guy like Jock, right, who's had so many expectations upon him since he's been drafted. And I heard him speak earlier in camp when they was at the Greenbrier. He talked about feeling more free and feeling like he can play to his skill set in Jim Short's defense. So it'd be interesting the tweaks to see has been made with the linebackers and how they react to it compared to how they deal with Joe Woods.
Well, you mentioned Tristan Hill and who's a defensive tackle, and then the linebackers. Those are spots where there may be a name that kind of like Tristan Hill that sort of comes out of nowhere, maybe even more obscure than that. Some guy that stands out. I know somebody the other day mentioned, the linebackers haven't looked really good in training camp, but we still got a lot of time in the preseason, more camp. So there's a lot of time for defensive tackle and linebacker. Even though we know some of the names at linebacker, none of them are such short things that somebody from out of the blue couldn't come take a job. I mean, that happens sometimes, and it could happen there, and it certainly could happen at defensive tackle. Nobody to me at defensive tackle or linebacker for the Browns, in my opinion, should be guaranteed a starting job outside of
Dalvin Tomlinson.
Dalvin Tomlinson. That's it. And again, I know there's guys we assume will be starters, especially at linebacker. But to me, nobody's played well enough at that position on this team that they should be a sure thing. If there's some guy we never heard of who made the team, who was undrafted and just kills it, and they're like, well, this guy's better. I don't care that he wasn't drafted or is not a name. Let's go with the best guy you can get.
This might be
sure they'll do.
This might be an unpopular take, and Jason, you can weigh in on this as well. Anthony Walker, I feel like was, re-signed because he's considered the heart and soul of the team. He's a good locker room guy, a good veteran and leader to have on his team. But when Sione Takitaki got his opportunities to play as the Mike linebacker, I thought we seen him in a different light that we had never seen him before. And so I understand that, Anthony Walker has been considered the captain or that guy. But I think Takitaki is a guy that you're talking about that if he goes out there and show it, it might be hard not to make him that Mike linebacker because I think he excelled when he got the opportunities in that role.
He had his best performance when he moved to the middle for the Browns. I think Anthony Walker's better. He's just a better football player. But for Takitaki, where he was playing to the level he went to when he moved to the middle, 100%. He was much better. I just think Anthony Walker is a better player. So I think he's still a starting middle linebacker.
I agree, but it is tricky because I agree with what Earl said. He was better. He's more of a fit to play middle linebacker.
He's younger, all that. But at this point, you're trying to win football games right now. Give me Anthony Walker in the middle. But Takitaki looked lost looked like his days in Cleveland were numbered down the
Yeah, he
outside,
did.
frankly. And when he moved to the middle, he was better.
Maybe Jim Schwartz finds a way to make him effective on the outside more. We'll have to see how he does it. JOK, as you said, seemed excited about the way they're changing up the defense, and so maybe that's different. Another guy, we're not going to see him tonight, but another guy just kind of sparked because you talk about Taki playing well down the stretch. I thought Grant Delpit played really well down the stretch too. And he's a guy who looked like, they drafted him high. He was a second-round pick. Mm-hmm. And his first couple of years with the Browns, injury, and he wasn't performing. And even at the beginning of last year, I'm like, I think Grant Delpit's just not the guy. But the second half of last year, like Taki, which in Delpit's case, he went off to change positions, I thought Delpit played his best football. And so we've talked a lot about Juan Thornhill making the Browns secondary better, and I think he will because he's better than Johnson. But I also think if we get the Grant Delpit we had in the second half of the year for a full season, then that's a big upgrade too, because I thought he was a different player the last 7-8 games of the year.
This is a big year for him.
Yeah,
it's sort of a make or break year for him, really. And he can be a missile back there. It just seems when you limit his responsibilities and you simplify his role, he can take off. It's when you make him stand there and think and process more often is when things seem to break down.
And I think that's why having Jim Schwartz as his defensive coordinator, I think we will see him take that next step. Everybody talks about Jim Schwartz's defense being so simple to understand, so to where they're not out there thinking too much. They can just go out there and play football. I don't know what took Joe Woods so long. I think he was forced to do so. But towards the end of the season, you start seeing him play Grant Delpit at his more natural safety position, more closer to the line of scrimmage, more in the box, putting him in position to be able to be a playmaker. And here it is, Jim Schwartz, that's his plan for him all along. So, if he can stay healthy and really just, not only sustain how he finished last season, but take it to the next step, I think he can be like that breakout player for the Cleveland Browns this year.
More important than the game tonight is, of course, the fact that Joe Thomas is going in the Hall of Fame. He'll finally be enshrined, and he's the first Cleveland Browns player in forever. Who was the last Browns player to go into the Hall of Fame? You know it offhand? I'm just thinking about that. I'm like, can't even think of.
I looked this up, or I read it recently, but I don't remember.
Who the hell is the last Browns player in the Hall of Fame? It's been a long time.
I'm trying to think of it. I think in the 80s somebody was inducted. Oh, Ozzie.
Okay.
Ozzie.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
What year was that?
What year did he go in? I don't know. That would have been the 90s that he went in, I think.
Let's see.
And I think he was working in Baltimore at the time when he went in, if I'm mistaken. I don't know.
So I was born in 1987, right? I vaguely remember the Cleveland Browns before they left here in 95. And so most of my memory is 99 into now.
So 99, he went in the Hall of Fame?
Yep,
99.
And to see Joe Thomas going to the Hall of Fame, I think personally is pretty cool because a lot of the Browns teams that I've seen in my lifetime has been horrible, right?
Yeah.
And this was a guy to me who I got much respect for. Me and Anthony was talking about this. You had an opportunity to be traded to go win the Super Bowl with the Denver Broncos and Peyton Manning, but you opted to stay here. And not too many people opt to stay in Cleveland when you have an opportunity to go elsewhere. I always thought that he was truly a pillar of the community. I thought he was a guy that represented the organization very, very well on and off the field, and that he truly set the example. He played with all kind of injuries that we never knew about, torn ACLs, sprained this and sprained that, and he got out there every single day and he bust his ass, and he really showed that he was the epitome of Cleveland. A lot of people will talk about a former quarterback who used to be here, and they will say that, he represents Cleveland. He gets us. And to me, he didn't. I think Joe Thomas is the guy who truly represents Cleveland well. This is a guy who brings his hard hat and his lunch pail every single time he comes to work. And it's unfortunate, his rookie season was the year the Browns, I think, won 10-6 and didn't make the playoffs. And who knew that it would be as good as it gets for him in his career?
Yeah. I think I originally, the first thing about Joe that stuck out to me was on draft day when he went fishing with his dad.
Yeah.
And I thought, this cat's a little different.
Yeah.
And that was their routine. That's what they did. They went fishing. And so that's what he did. He went fishing during the NFL draft.
Yeah.
And that has always stuck with me, that when he was drafted by the Browns in the first round, he wasn't in New York. He wasn't in the green room. He wasn't on the podium.
Nope.
He was on a boat with his dad fishing. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was.
The Browns have, most of the Hall of Famers for the Browns played in the 50s and the 60s and before that. Ozzie Newsome is the most recent Hall of Famer. If you had to bet on current Brown making the Hall of Fame, who you voting for?
Joe Bitonio.
Earl?
Easily Bitonio.
It's harder. Zach actually.
I don't know
Zach,
about this easier stuff.
Zach Jackson
Guys.
just posted a story today on Bitonio being the next Hall of Famer. It's a little bit harder for guards than it is tackles.
Guards don't go in the Hall of Fame that much.
Yeah, but I think he's earned it.
I don't know that he's a lock for the Hall of
I
Fame.
don't think he's a lock, but you asked me who's next. I think it's
Like of the what since '99 or current Browns team.
I mean, there's no other player since '99 that's going into the Hall of Fame.
outside of probably Joe Bitonio.
possibly.
Well, no, I mean, there are 3 guys in the current team that could potentially be Hall of Famers: Nick Chubb, Myles Garrett, and Bitonio.
Bitonio, yeah.
And I guess I'll throw in Deshaun Watson too. He has a long way to go,
Yeah.
but I'll throw him in as a possibility. But I'm just saying, nobody that's played for the Browns from '99 that's no longer on the team is ever sniffing the Hall of Fame.
No, of course not. Bitonio, I think, is the nearest to the end of his career. Therefore, he would be
Right.
the first.
That's kind of why I said him too.
Yeah, but obviously Miles and Chubb. We've talked
Yeah.
about it before. It's pitiful that the Browns could have 3 Hall of Famers and can't do anything with it.
Are they all? I would agree that if they all retired today, Bitonio's the most likely.
Yeah,
But I think when it's all said and done, I don't think he'll be the most likely. Of
Miles
the 3.
probably will be of the 3.
Maybe. It depends how long Nick Chubb plays for.
Yeah.
Because Nick Chubb has played at a Hall of Fame level every year of his career.
Yeah. But
Running backs burn out quicker.
It's so funny
That's
that,
right.
that you
but
said
Terrell
that.
Davis got into the Hall of Fame, and he only did it for like 5-6 years, but he's part of
It's,
the
just, it's funny you say that, man, because we talking about, we sitting here, we watching reels, right? And I always find people with these throwback reels of guys like Jamal Charles, Priest Holmes.
who had a couple of great years.
Yeah, Chris Johnson. You know, guys like this, and it's
Chris
like, damn,
Johnson,
man.
yeah.
It was
2,000 yards.
David
season,
Johnson.
Chris
David Johnson.
Sean Alexander. Look how quickly. Look how Todd Gurley fell off a cliff.
Yep.
Yeah, so like
Kareem Hunt may be out of football.
It's
He may be
one
out
of those
football.
situations, man, to where like it's that's a good question. It's something to
Yeah.
think about. If Nick Chubb retired today, would he be a
No,
retired?
he wouldn't be a Hall of
He
Famer.
wouldn't be.
No.
You know, but I think
But he doesn't have to
he's
do
on
it
his
for that
way.
much longer. Like another 3 years at this level, he might be.
I think it's got to be more than 3. Some
Adrian
of the-
Peterson set the bar so high.
Well, part of that is yes. But it's stupid that Terrell Davis would get in because he won a Super Bowl. Like, that's just dumb.
Question, random thought. Do you think that like how the running back position has been treated in the NFL and how it's viewed now and how the game has changed so much, do you think the criteria for running backs getting to the Hall of Fame now becomes, do you have to view it with a slanted eye, I guess, so
I
to
think
speak?
all that you do, because it used to be like now, if you look at same thing in the opposite direction. If you look at like quarterback stats now, they're so. If you go back and look at some of the quarterback stats from Terry Bradshaw, from Joe Namath,
They'd get cut today.
their stats, their statistics, you'd be like, how is this guy in the Hall of Fame?
Right.
Yeah.
They have more. I think Joe Namath and Bradshaw may have thrown more picks and touchdowns, or it's close. Nowadays, nobody's like that. None of the good players are anywhere close to that. So you're going to have guys that put up massive numbers, like a guy like Matt Ryan. Like, to me, I wouldn't even consider him for the Hall of Fame. Would you guys put Matt Ryan in the Hall of Fame?
I'd have to look at the numbers. But
I don't even care about the numbers because everybody's numbers are going to be so big
But
now.
when I hear Matt Ryan, do I think Hall of Fame? No.
No.
No,
And
I
by the
don't.
way, I don't think, I know this is, I'm in the minority of this. I don't think Eli Manning's a Hall of Famer. And I don't think you should be a Hall of Famer just because you won 2 Super Bowls.
I think Super Bowl is a team thing. That's just me. I know a lot of people say,
I mean,
well,
a quarterback goes a long way, especially now. It's more
Yeah.
of a deal.
I agree with that, but like the whole team has to be moving in the same direction and accomplish that feat. So I wouldn't say he's a Hall of Famer because he's beat the Patriots twice in the Super Bowl.
But
I
he's
definitely
up
agree with
there
that.
like in yardage all time.
Yeah.
Although he's going to get passed by a lot of guys in the next decade, I bet.
Yeah.